Call to order, Town of Prescott Valley, regular town council meeting, October 10th. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Freund. Councilmember Searcher.
Here.
Councilmember Greer. Here. Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
Mayor Polguda.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I would like to welcome down Pastor Tony De La Riva from the Firm Foundation for our invocation and to lead us in the pledge. Welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you guys. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for the tremendous privilege of being able to do this. I thank you that we live in the United States of America, where we have the freedom of religion. And I thank you especially for this community where these things are still valued. Even as I think about where I'm from, something like this would never happen. And so I just thank you so much for this evening. I thank you for each one of these members, the members of our town council. I pray for tonight for this meeting. I pray that you would bless their service and work in our community for the preservation of freedom, the preservation of the values that we all benefit so tremendously from, ultimately for the peace and the freedom and the prosperity of our community here. And I ask all of these things, as I always do, for the sake of the Lord Jesus. Amen. Well, let's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, item 3, proclamation for Arizona Cities and Towns Week. Clerk?
Whereas the citizens of the town of Prescott Valley rely on the town to experience a high quality of life in our community. And whereas cities and towns in Arizona work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to deliver vital city services such as fire, police, and emergency medical response to ensure safe communities. And whereas cities and towns in Arizona also provide services and programs that enhance the quality of life for residents, such as parks, utilities, street maintenance, sanitation, and recycling services, libraries, community centers, and recreational programs. And whereas it is important for the town of Prescott Valley to continue to provide the excellent delivery of services and programs that our citizens have come to expect in our community. And whereas through participation and cooperation, citizens, community leaders, local businesses, and municipal staff can work together to ensure that services provided by the town of Prescott Valley can remain exceptional elements of the quality of life of our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Prescott Valley joins with the League of Arizona Cities and Towns and fellow municipalities across the state of Arizona in declaring October 13th through the 19th as Arizona Cities and Towns Week. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 4, call to the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters listed on the agenda or solely on matters within the jurisdiction of the town. Any persons wishing to address the council must register their name with the town clerk prior to the commencement of the meeting. The council's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Such remarks shall be limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is granted by the mayor. The clerk will read 3 names. They'll come up. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When 30 seconds are left, you'll hear a ding. You'll hear a ding. And that's your 30-second warning. And then at the end, when your time is up, you'll hear multiple dings. But that's not your time to stop speaking to council, just your time for this evening. You can always make an appointment with council or staff or be directed to on how you can set up that appointment to have a longer and further involved conversation. So with that being said, clerk.
So we have Karen Hunt, Kelly Scott, and Patricia Betzold.
Welcome, Ms. Hunt.
Okay. My name is Karen Hunt, and I live on Columbine Drive in Prescott Valley.
I have a question for the council members. What happened to the curfew laws for kids under the age of 18? Why, if they're past, if it's past 10 o'clock at night, why aren't they be taken into the police station? My youngest son, that's when the police station was on Valley Road, I think it was, and I got tired, so the police station called at 10 o'clock or 11 at night, and I made my husband go get him. And so I thought, what happened to the curfew laws? And then they had the graffiti removal. And I was kind of really upset when this last meeting, when this person of the graffiti said, if you don't remove the graffiti, you're going to be fined. And usually gang members do the graffiti. So yes, we got to toughen the curfew laws and go after these gang members who do all the graffiti. And the police know who they are. Yeah, so the removal of graffiti. So I just want to ask that question. What happened to the curfew laws? Is it still active? If anybody is under the age of 18, to be arrested and have their parents come to the police station and to retrieve them? My youngest son, I got tired of being bad cop. We joined the tough love. And I made my husband be the bad cop. No, bad cop. I have police in my family history. And so we had him arrested. He was 1 week at juvie hall, 1 year probation, and he had to pay for it himself. Then when he had that my life, my job attitude, with my husband and I discussed it, he passed down he says, son, you're going to have to find out what it's like out there. You're going to find another place to live. And then when he was hedging about 3 or 4 months later to come back home, my brother-in-law lived in Kingman at the time. And when he had the courage to ask, he said that his dad said, you have 2 choices, son. You can go live in Kingman, live with uncle, get a job there, find something. Well, if I have to, I'll go find. And 2 years later, he joined the Navy. So parents, I got tired of parents up here. Oh, my baby, I don't want them to go to jail. Would you rather have them go to jail than prison? That's exactly what happened to a couple of my youngest son's companions. Ended up in prison. So it's better to have them arrested now and take them to Prescott Valley Police Department, have their parents be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I believe there's the chief's in the back corner. You can speak to him. Ms. Scott, you're up.
Mayor, council, and town staff. My name is Kelly Scott, and I reside in Quailwood. It's my impression that council was elected to represent the electors rather than the private interests of select individuals. It's my experience council has strayed from their duties of representing the community as a whole. Growth can be positive if managed and planned in relationship to the needs and desires of the community in its entirety rather than a select few. The Lakeshore 650 combined density is staggering. Yet the Lame Duck Council, disregarding the citizens' pleas to delay, proceed to approve the project, giving the visual of Lakeshore 650 being rushed through. When citizens proposed a referendum for consideration to place LS 650 on the ballot for the voters to decide, the town agencies turned a blind eye to professionals hired from outside the area by the developers group to harass, intimidate, and coerce the citizens of the community as they exercise their constitutional rights in a referendum petition. What unfolded during the process has been shocking, disheartening, and at times frightening. And I speak personally from that. Citizens who came to sign this petition locations were subjected to harassment, intimidation, and verbal assaults by the outsiders hired for the specific purpose to impede the referendum process by those who stand to profit from the development. This vile, ugly behavior was on full display, witnessed by thousands of people who visited the park and our town library as the outsiders camped next to the petition signing stations. Families are sickened by what has unfolded during the referendum process. Citizens are appalled by the countermeasures of those who resorted to the most despicable citizen tactics, leaving a soiled reputation on the town's elected officials and developers. It's incomprehensible how town officials who office on the same complex as the library remain complacent or perhaps even maybe morally complicit with this ongoing action. Governing agencies' oblivion to the daily repulsive behavior towards citizens was both reckless and tarnished our community relations. The lack of town proactive involvement, setting expectations with the developer on acceptable conduct of their professional disruptors, or a visit from the local law enforcement advising a zero tolerance for harassment, intimidation, and coercion spoke volumes to the people, whether signing a petition or passing by. The visual of the outside disruptors and the town's officials turning a blind eye is a dark moment in Prescott Valley history, leaving the community more divided than before. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Just to be clear, ma'am, I believe you spoke to the town manager in reference to this, as well as the Prescott Valley Police Department, just so we're clear. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Betchel, welcome.
I'm Patricia Betzel, 3883 North Fairfax Road. I'm speaking on the bungalows on Village Way and the item on the agenda tonight about their 8-inch gravity sewer and the new regional lift station. Basically, the original approval included a condition that the developer would be responsible for any related infrastructure needed to serve the project. But it also included a clause that said they could seek to distribute or reimburse the costs beyond those required for the project through the creation of a public improvements reimbursement agreement. So the town and the developer, once again, not the citizens, has concluded it's in their mutual interest for these mains to connect to the Quailwood lift station now, even though I assume that that wasn't required in the first place as mandatory, otherwise it would have been brought up. And it's the council's desire to enter into a development agreement now to reimburse and compensate the developer for these costs, which are expected to exceed $168,600. So I could say I'd call certain names, but I won't. I can only imagine if the Lakeshore 650 project went through, which is about 18 times that size, it would cost us $3 million. Because there's a clause in there that says the town council can go ahead and decide, well, we should help them out, and then it's going to come out of the tax dollars' pockets. The bottom line is, if you go to other towns and cities, there are legal instruments by which you can require the developer to pay for it, and then once development occurs that would actually use that same infrastructure, they would pay the developer back. This is a standard order of business. The fact that we are contemplating and including these kind of clauses seems to indicate why in the world we're still paying or giving 2% of all our sales tax to pay the Fanes back for numerous projects all over the town, why we have $8 million bills that we're paying to the Fanes for work they've done, and always the answer is, well, it's for the mutual benefit. Well, I think these costs for mutual benefit need to be included in the original ordinance being considered by the council, so the council knows and the people know before it's voted for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. On item 5, council communications, I'll start to my right. Councilman Zurcher.
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
I just want to give a shout out to our staff for the wonderful job they did on the Harvest Festival. They do such a wonderful job setting it all up, taking it all down, and I particularly liked the band, the East Southern Ways. So thanks, guys.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to welcome Steve Jarpa back to the Building Board of Appeals, item 7F, renewing his service, and also Cody Yates to the Board of Adjustments for a term until January 31st, 2026. And then I'd like to give kudos to Neil Wadsworth and his team for item 7K, which is the fill station Neil, you guys are ahead of schedule on that, and I really appreciate it. It's so important to this town because it's going to save water, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, Manager's Report, Mr. Davidson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just 2 items. The monthly report for September is available online. And so if anyone has any questions on that, please let me know. And just a heads up that the library will be closed this Sunday due to former President Trump's visit to the community. The Secret Service, for security purposes, is required or requested that buildings in this area be locked down. So the library will not be open this Sunday. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are considered routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Council, we've all had a chance to review our packet. If there's no other items that need to be removed, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve all items listed under consent agenda by electronic vote.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Clerk, I'll vote aye.
Councilmember Searcher,
I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'll vote yes.
Councilmember Freund, that passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 8, Town Code Amendment, Graffiti Removal, Ordinance Number 2024-943, consideration and possible action. Mr. Legler, I believe you can take this, but
Ms. Robinson's not here tonight, so I'm the one you can ask if you have any questions.
Council, have you any additional questions for Mr. Legler and references? I believe we discussed it in length last week. That being said, clerk?
Ordinance number 2024-943, an ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, amending section 9-4B-060, graffiti removal and abatement, in article 9-04B, graffiti, in chapter 9, health and sanitation of the town code, to establish notice of violation requirements for graffiti removal by responsible parties, providing for graffiti removal and abatement, providing that all other chapters, articles, and subsections of the town code shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provisions shall not be affected, but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, ma'am. Shall this ordinance pass?
Councilmember Searcher,
Yes.
Councilmember Freund. That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 9A, professional service agreement with West Consultants, Inc. in the amount of $31,280. Evaluate urban enhanced runoff. Ms. Lund, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Just wanted to give a brief introduction before I introduce Mr. Gerlach here. This project is a part of a larger project to try to get as much water as we can into our aquifer. This is going to allow us to be able to quantify the amount of stormwater recharge we can actually facilitate getting into our aquifer, and then over time, potentially, should the political steps be made at the Capitol, get credit for that via some work with ADWR. So with that, I'll introduce our consultant for West Associates, or West Consultants. Mike Gerlach is a senior project manager. He has more than 30 years of experience working on water resource planning and design projects for communities in the arid Southwest. He has been involved in all phases of the current master drainage plan that is being worked on, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back again. I wish to briefly go over what we are proposing to do. I have tried to keep this short and free of a lot of technical jargon. So I will begin first with a brief walk through the hydrologic cycle, which will set the stage for what we're going to talk about. That cycle begins with precipitation over the watershed, and the precipitation then falls on the ground, interacts with the soil where it becomes available for infiltration into the ground, and then eventually percolation down to the water table. After the infiltration process begins, what doesn't make it into the ground becomes surface runoff, and this is the key component that we will be addressing. However, throughout that process, there's a separate component, which is evaporation. There's many mechanisms for which evaporation occurs, one of which is through the soil, where soil moisture then evaporates up into the atmosphere, where it is consumed and never allows for water to reach the ground table. So how do we take advantage of this tool, though, this stormwater runoff? And the beauty is that when we have an urbanized condition in a watershed, the urbanization has the influence of decreasing the amount of infiltration and therefore percolation that goes into the ground. I think this is intuitive to us. And it has the side effect of increasing surface runoff. And this is the definition of the urban enhanced runoff that we are looking to investigate, which is the difference between the natural condition surface runoff and the post-development condition surface runoff. We want to be able to quantify that and determine how much water is available and then could potentially be infiltrated and percolated into the ground and into the water table that would then support the town's goals for maintaining safe yield for the community. So urban enhanced runoff, again, is key to the process that we wish to investigate. And to kind of put a fine point on this issue, the USGS conducted some studies, and in 1966 they prepared a report that quantified to a general extent the magnitude of the evaporation that is consumed in this hydrologic cycle process that we're talking about. And it's a staggering number. 95% is their estimate of the amount of precipitation that's generated in the state of Arizona is consumed by evaporation. And the point here is that it leaves us a very, very small margin for which to work with. And we really need to focus on how to capitalize on that very, very small margin. The good news is, through the work that we've been doing with the Area Drainage Master Plan and the stormwater investigations, we're developing a tremendous baseline data set of the amount of runoff that is generated within the community, and specifically the urban portion and urban enhanced runoff portion. And what this chart, this figure illustrates, the blue is surface water runoff depth for a specific event. So you can see large portions of the area are producing runoff during an event, which can be capitalized and used to recharge the aquifers. So let's talk a little bit about how we traditionally manage this urban runoff and then what we were proposing to do. So our traditional management technique is to treat runoff, surface runoff, as a nuisance. We capture it in a basin. It is detained, delayed, and then we release it. So illustrated here, if you imagine the bucket of rainfall, the white box, and recognize that the vast majority of that box is what is lost to evaporation or infiltration, and the remainder, the blue bar there, is the amount of runoff that we're dealing with. So under existing conditions, natural conditions, that's that kind of 95% mark that we're hitting. When you get an urbanized area, the amount of surface water increases, but again, it's kind of lost to the hydrologic cycle, which we want to capture. And our process for doing that and our method for illustrating this here is through some existing studies that are being done throughout the state right now. this is a new concept, and so there's a lot of effort right at the moment to try to quantify this process. And this is my one and only technical little part to what I want to talk about here. So I'm going to unpack this just a little bit, but I will keep it brief. We have completed some numerical model studies that demonstrate infiltration into the ground along with the evaporation. So our test case is we have a basin that is filled with water, and in these figures, the blue field is soil in its natural sort of moisture condition. The little notch at the very top is the basin. We fill that basin with water, and we calculate the process of it moving down through the soil and hopefully into that red band at the bottom, which is the groundwater table as we've simulated in this study, which is a depth of 150 feet. The panels on the left are a natural condition where we just simply have a basin, we fill it with water, and it progresses down. And the three images are taken at different snapshots in time during our simulation. You can sort of make out a thickened line at the bottom of the basin. That illustrates, under the conditions that we simulated, the depth that water penetrates the ground. And it's only about 10 feet before it is lost to evaporation, where evaporation sucks that water out of the ground and back into the moisture, or back into the air. The panel on the right illustrates what could be achieved if we use some technology that is being developed by a sister company called Parjana. And these are a device, you can think of them as like a giant straw that you drive into the ground, and they create a pathway for which water can then move through the soil more quickly and theoretically reach the groundwater table before it is consumed by evaporation. And so the panel on the right illustrates that process where we have simulated the presence of these devices in this same basin. We have put the same amount of water in this basin, and we have run the same model with these devices in there. And the red shading illustrates the movement of water through the soil over the same course of time as we simulated the natural condition. And you can see that in this instance, water does in fact reach the groundwater table before it is completely consumed by evaporation. We feel this technology is viable. We are currently testing it in a physical condition in southern Arizona. We are hoping to achieve the same sort of test here to validate the process and support the town's goal of reaching a safe yield condition. And that ends my presentation.
Sir, thank you very much. I just want to commend Neil and Tracy on what you guys are doing, taking a proactive approach to this problem that is obviously just countrywide. So we could always just sit back and do nothing, or we can take proactive measures to try to make a difference for maybe not next year, but generations to come. So appreciate that, and I know the residents of Prescott Valley appreciate that. Mr. Davidson, you have something to add?
I just wanted to add, first, thank you to the team, and this is very exciting, and this originated with the council with our water management policies and our strategies of really trying to find creative and unique ways to begin to try to address our long-term water needs. I just wanted to make sure that everyone here knows, and anyone listening, the water, this is a pilot that we'll be engaging in, so we've got to test it. And if we can prove that this can work, this is water that would permanently be provided back to the aquifer. This is not for growth. This is not water that can be extracted from the aquifer for growth. This would be water that we're permanently contributing back to the aquifer to help with reducing the overdraft. So this is a very positive thing. We're at the forefront of this. There's, again, a community in southern Arizona, but we'll be working with a number of statewide partners on this, and I'm really excited as we begin to, over the next number of months and years on this.
Yes, and to that effort, I mean, we're partnering with some pretty big names and several municipalities are watching us very closely. So this is bound to be a pretty important effort. These model results are for Red Rock, so our results are likely to vary from this, but certainly we can expect to see some success from this, I would imagine. However, we do need to test that before we can say that for certain.
Councilwoman Schumacher?
So I had a quick question. I know every area has different soils, like we have a lot of caliche or clay, gardening soil type style. Do you know what our area here is predominantly composed?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the process is highly dependent upon the soil conditions. So that's an excellent question. We do know that there is a large extent of a highly tight clay soils in this area. We have a number of subsurface investigations that we can draw from to enhance our understanding of that. But I will say that this technology has been installed throughout the country and in a variety of different soil conditions. And there are a number of case studies that we have to draw from that would shed light on its performance in this soil and other soils. And so far, we feel that the soil conditions here are not unlike soil conditions in other parts of the country where this method has been installed and is performing quite well. And we have actual evidence of that performance on top of that. So we feel that regardless of what the soil conditions we might encounter, depending on where we implement this method, the installation of the devices can overcome that.
Councilwoman Dickinson?
This is fascinating, and I think that, again, being on the cutting edge, as this council has been many, many times over the last 4 years, is very exciting. What is interesting is just last night I was watching a program on the Discovery Channel about a town called Petra in the Mideast, and was a town that was developed prior to the time of Christ. And this was an excavation group, and they actually found clay pipes, and they made the desert into a prosperous, booming trading area for the silk trade exchange. And they showed how that particular area had been just growing beautiful trees and plants, and it had over 50,000 people in this town. And they are discovering just now that how they controlled the water and how they made and were able to preserve this town for decades. And it actually was a couple hundred years that this town existed. And it was just fascinating. And I'm thinking of that as I'm looking at this. It's almost so clear to me how this can really be a wonderful addition to our town. Thank you so very, very much for your looking into this, your research, your investigations, your partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
So it's always been interesting on who owns the surface water. And what I understand from this, and I appreciate, is that the above pre-development conditions before it gets into a basin are up for grabs. And that's the part that you're going to try to put back into the ground through these straws in a demonstration project.
Yeah, well, you hit on the legal challenge here, and this is still being understood through various task force, and I think Tracy alluded to that. I will just simply say that your community is not the only one that is actively using or wanting to use this concept of urban enhanced runoff. I think sort of indirectly, we already do this through our current practices of using these retention basins. We sort of do it unwittingly, where we capture the runoff from an urban area, put it into a basin, and some of that water does make it into the ground, and depending on where you are, it may or may not travel further into the subsoil conditions and possibly recharge. So it's not that this is necessarily unprecedented from a practical standpoint. It's just not legally solidified as a formal process. And so that is something else that is going on in parallel with what we are proposing to do.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, council, can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I make a motion to approve the professional services agreement with West Consultants, Inc. for services related to the concept of urban enhanced runoff, UER, in the amount of $31,280 by electronic vote.
Have a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 9B, renewed, amended, and restated development agreement with Cavan for bungalows on Village Way, resolution number 2024-2389. Mr. Wadsworth, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What you have in front of you is, as it states, a renewed, amended, and restated development agreement. This development agreement with Cavan was originally signed back in 2021 for the purpose of collaborating on a regional wastewater lift station and force main that would serve the area shown on this map from everywhere south of almost about Bradshaw Mountain Road, south of there down to 169. So that whole area is down gradient from our gravity wastewater systems. And so that lift station, which would be a regional lift station, will collect all of the wastewater potentially from that area and pump it through the force mains up to the Quailwood lift station. In addition, it would allow some of the areas of town that it's west of Highway 69 to get into that lift station. And I don't want to take any thunder from Lisa Vaughn, our utilities engineer, who will be up here speaking to you next. But one of the things that we're doing is we're getting sewer mains put under Highway 69. And we've already heard from the Affinity RV folks that they are very interested in tying into that when it gets done. And so it'll open it up to others on that side of the road. What you're looking at tonight essentially is the same agreement that was signed several years ago. All we're doing at this point is extending the expiration date. It expired in June, and we're extending it for another couple of years in order to let the project finish out. The force mains have already been installed, and the lift station is about 1/3 completed and is anticipated to be finished up before the end of this fiscal year. So I think I've covered all of the aspects, so I'll open it up for questions at this point.
Vice Mayor?
So Neil, you were pretty clear that there's no money involved in this. It's just an extension of time, correct?
Well, we're already obligated. We are, looking somewhere between 75 to 85% of the cost of this is being borne by the town because it is a regional lift station that's going to serve others. So you're already obligated to that, but this just extends the agreement. That's all we're doing at this point, is extending it until June 30th of 2026, I believe.
But
That's
no
the only
fiscal
time.
impact for this action.
No additional fiscal impact, correct.
And so it appeared, because we've been conditioning the industrial lots out there to hook up to sewer when it's in the area, would they hook up to this treatment plant?
You're talking about the Antelope commercial on the east side of the Agua Fria. this project has to happen first before that they will ever be able to hook in. The gravity sewer lines are already in place over there. And then, so once this project is done, there will have to be a small lift station on the east side of the Agua Fria that would have to be constructed to pump it from that location to this lift station, because we've got the deep Agua Fria is right between them. You can't gravity flow from one to the other. But this has to happen first.
Got it. So of that total that we approved in the original developer agreement, the developer is only using about 25% of that lift station.
14%, I believe, is about what they would be.
Majority of it is going to be used by other businesses around and will be reimbursed when they come in.
Correct. So we would collect fees and such to pay, to reimburse for the costs that we have now put into paying for this lift station and force mains.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
So for example, the intersection of, on the east side of Kachina and Highway 69, about 20 acres of commercial property that is there, they would benefit from this and they would pay the town back with their permits and fees.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure. Council, have you anything else for Mr. Wadsworth? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign resolution number 2024-2389, approving the proposed renewed amendment and restated development agreement with Cavan for bungalows on Village Way by electronic vote.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to 9C, construction contract, SR 69-169 Roundabout Waterline Relocation Project, CIP number CW2412 in the amount of $914,381 to Earth Resource Corporation. Ma'am, welcome.
Yes, hi, thank you. Hello, Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members. I'm Lisa Vaughn. I am the utilities engineer, work under Neil Wadsworth. So this project, let me give you a little bit of background on it. Oh, how do I go to the next slide? Is there like a, oh, right here. Sorry. First time doing this. There we go. Okay. So there is going to be a roundabout the ADOT is putting in at the 69 and 169 intersection on our state routes there. This requires that our water line be moved. Otherwise, the roundabout will go right over the top of it. So we are relocating that water line more east and a little bit more north on some parts, including where the water line crosses under the Highway 69 to the west side of the road. So we have to move that more up so it's more out of the way of that roundabout. In the process, we decided to go along with the lift station being developed there, that we would as well make everything ready for the sewer to be put in as well. The roundabout is going to begin construction, they believe, in February, maybe March. So we need to have this completed, hopefully by then. If everything goes to schedule, this will be completed by February 28th. Getting just, again, a little more detail, a little bit closer. If you want to look at a closer picture, that's kind of that darker line is where the water line is being moved. The one across the Highway 69 is on the north there, and then the sewer line is going on the south. As Neil already stated, the sewer line going across there will allow businesses and residents already in this area to tie in to our public system, which would be a benefit to getting their sewage and get their reclaimed water. So this is a good opportunity to do that. This project went out for a competitive bid. It was advertised September 1st of this year, with bids coming in they were due by September 30th. They were all sealed and they were opened with the bidders' representatives present. The winning low bid was Earth Resources Corporation at $914,381. That bid actually was a little bit less than the amount we budgeted for the the project. So that's what we're looking to do for this project. Any questions or comments?
Council, we have questions or comments on this?
So, thank you for your presentation. The water line on the, I guess that would be the north side of Highway 69, is that easement area, or is that going to be on property that's owned by other individuals, or?
Yeah, great question. All of this work actually is staying within the ADOT right-of-way. We are actually, I guess I should correct that. We are actually moving a manhole in the sewer line slightly just to make the connection a little more easily in the easement we already have with the bungalows at Village Way. So that's the only part that's going in an easement. The rest is 100% in the ADOT right-of-way, including that north line, the north water line that is crossing under the 69. Yeah.
Council, will you have anything else? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good job.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I make a motion to award the bid to and the related contract with Earth Resources Corporation for construction of the SR 69/169 roundabout waterline relocation project, CIP number CW 2412, in the amount of $914,381 by electronic vote.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 9D, Town Code Restrictions to Public Solicitation Motor Vehicle Ordinance 2024-944, consideration possible action. Welcome, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
We discussed this, Council, last week. Are there any additional questions for the Lieutenant in regards to this? With that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
May I please read the ordinance?
You should probably read it first. Clerk, what do you think?
Ordinance number 2024-944, an ordinance of the mayor and common council. Sorry, this is the first reading, right? You're right, Mayor.
Clerk, can we get a motion? I don't hear that very often, so, but thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to make a motion to read the ordinance number 2024-944, adopting new section 10-1-170, prohibited solicitation by title only on 2 separate occasions, then place the same on final passage by electronic vote.
Second. Clerk, please call the vote.
That passes unanimously. Now I
you,
can
ma'am.
read. Ordinance 2024-944, an ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, enacting Town Code Section 10-01-170, prohibited solicitation, in Article 10-1, offenses, of Chapter 10, offenses, providing that all other chapters, articles, and sections of the Town Code not herein amended shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provisions shall not be affected, but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 9E, Town Code Amendments to Chapter 6, Animal Control, and Chapter 9, Health and Sanitation, Neighborhood Services and Development Services Coordination Ordinance 2024-945, consideration possible action. Mr. Legler's here if we have any additional questions, Council. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to make a motion to read ordinance number 2024-945, amending Town Code Chapter 6 and 9 by title only on 2 separate occasions, then place the same on final passage by electronic vote.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Clerk, please call the vote.
That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ordinance number 2024-945, an ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, amending various sections in Chapter 6, Animal Control, and Chapter 9, Health and Sanitation of the Town Code, to authorize the new Neighborhood Services Department to administer and enforce the town's property maintenance and animal control codes, and to enact requirements related to the reasonable restraint of dogs, providing that all other chapters, articles, and sections of the town code not herein amended shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provisions shall not be affected, but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, ma'am. And this comes to the end on item 10. Council, is there anything for the good of the order that needs to be covered? Seeing none, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out. Meeting adjourned.